unauthorized psychoanalysis of Donald J. Trump, post-traumatic slave master syndrome, the role of trauma in the life of Donald J. Trump. Much has been written about the personality of Donald J. Trump. Most of it has been non-complimentary and unsympathetic. In that regard, this article will not break precedent. Nevertheless, as a preface, a couple of his best characteristics will be mentioned. He neither smokes nor drinks, and he rises early every day. These are admirable qualities that don't get much press, probably because they exist as tiny, anomalous islands in a sea of bad behaviors, such as eating McDonald's burgers, watching multiple channels of TV at once every night, and meticulously avoiding physical exercise. The Washington Post reported that Trump has a theory that the human body is like a battery with a finite amount of energy, which exercise only depletes. Compounding this, he and Melania sleep in separate beds, perhaps separate rooms, depending on whose report is read. So probably no exercise coming from that direction either. So why do we find these islands of good behaviors in a man so fraught with bad behaviors that he has become only the third U.S. president ever impeached, and so fraught with psychopathology that over 70,000 mental health practitioners signed onto a letter attesting to his impairment? The answer may be trauma. Donald has had his share. One of the worst was the death of his brother Fred. Fred was the heir apparent of the family business and had even been given the prophetic middle name of his and Donald's dad, the name Christ. But Fred succumbed to alcoholism, so Donald took his place and with his father ran the racially discriminative real estate business that secured the family fortune. This might explain Donald's aversion to drink and drugs, something few with the Playboy's partying background, such as Donald's, have been able to avoid. Some of the Donald's bad behaviors have a similar traumatic origin. His impulsive, almost reflex response to crime and immigration may be seen to some related to the fact that a man named Paul Bocasto mugged Trump's mother back in 1992, causing her to bleed into her brain, and which left her with permanent damage to her hearing and sight. She was 79 years old at the time. That was clearly a traumatic event. However, that mugging does not explain Trump's earlier overkill in 1989, when some young black men were falsely accused of raping and beating a young white investment banker, Tricia Mayeli, while she jogged in Central Park. On that occasion, Donald spent tens of thousands of dollars to take out ads in all the New York daily papers that urged the harshest of punishments for the alleged perpetrators of the crime. It featured lines calling essentially for the lynching of these young men without mentioning their names. Donald's ad railed, "I want to hate these muggers and murderers. They should be forced to suffer, and when they kill, they should be executed for their crimes." Donald was clearly upset by this crime like never before. However, police received 28 other reports of first-degree rapes or attempted rapes during the week in which the jogger was raped, of which 23 were non-white women. So why did Trump go ballistic over this particular rape? Trump's call to lynch the accused has its origin in a more chronic, historic, and peculiarly American trauma: America's history of slavery and Jim Crow apartheid. Trump's emotions on this subject were shaped by an arch racist, a member of a white supremacist group, the Ku Klux Klan, a group that did the kinds of things called for in that article. That arch racist was Donald Trump's father, Fred Christ Trump. Fred Christ Trump Sr. was in fact arrested with 6 other Klan members at an altercation at a Klan rally in 1927. That part was documented by the New York Times. Many have pointed out that Fred's presence and arrest at that rally do not prove that he was a member of the Klan. However, what these people do not mention is that another paper, the Long Island Daily Press, on June 2nd, 1927, documented that all 7 arrestees were wearing Klan attire. For most people, wearing a white hood and a cross and a white robe is proof that one is a member of the KKK. So far, no one has proven that Fred had an ID card signed by the proper officials. If you're waiting for that, wait for Bess Meyerson and Ed Koch's baby. For the rest of us, Fred Trump was clearly a Klansman. Imagine what it might have been like for young Trump to see his dad's old robe hanging in the closet or kept in some old chest. Trump was in high school by the 1960s when the horrors of the Klan and white supremacist lynchings were being documented in the papers daily. Not only black people saw the pictures of Emmett Till or read about the accounts of Schwerner, Goodman, and Cheney in 1964. See Chapter 1 of this book to review the racist housing policies of Trump's father, or find a link to folk singer Woody Guthrie's song from the 1950s that also documents Woody's personal experience with Donald's father, the racist Fred Christ Trump. There is also evidence that Donald was further traumatized when he was sent to New York Military Academy, where, according to a Daily News article by Sandy McIntosh, a Major Theodore Tobias was particularly brutal to Trump. Says McIntosh, Tobias slapped and punched him until he learned to make his bed and polish his shoes, things that Donald had at first refused to do. It is no wonder that Donald grew to identify with his aggressor and prefer the role of bully to victim. Like many with history such as his, he sees only 2 options. He sees the world as humiliate or be humiliated. This is the legacy of United States white supremacy. Not only the obvious victims, the enslaved or the discriminated against, suffered from the trauma. Trauma has bad effects on all involved, the victims, the witnesses, and the perpetrators. The ways in which they suffer are different. Donald suffers not from post-traumatic slavery syndrome, but post-traumatic slave master syndrome. Frantz Fanon, a black psychiatrist in Algeria, documented this phenomenon of the torturer being traumatized in his book, Wretched of the Earth. Fanon had the unique experience of treating the French persecutors during Algeria's War of Liberation in the daytime, and the survivors of their torture, the rebels, at night. The phenomenon of the persecutor's suffering should not be the cause of any wet hankies among the oppressed, but it should provide insight as to what the country is dealing with when they see a Donald Trump. He is as true a son of America as it could produce, and his bad actions struck a responsive chord in the hearts of white Americans from Staten Island to Butte, Montana in 2016, and may do so again in 2020.